It's pretty bright. This.
You could also move them back under the bamboo. That would soften them a lot.
You have been out in the sun.
Have been what?
Out in the sun? Because you look red.
I'm just embarrassed.
Is that what that is?
Genetically, I'm genetically embarrassed.
But you didn't get out in the sun today?
No.
You look red.
Huh. I drank some matcha earlier. Would that do that?
Really?
Probably a couple hours ago.
Maybe.
I just.
You didn't ever flush it that bad.
Yeah.
It looks like you went out in the sun.
What is that stuff they give kids with? Used to give kids with ADHD.
Ritalin.
Ritalin, yeah, that'll make it.
Speed you up, slow you down.
Maybe matcha is my Ritalin.
And I'll be adjusting the lights as we go, as it gets darker.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Atlanta Soda Zen Center, ZENtalk. Streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Mixer. Hope you can join us tonight. Hope you can join us once a week. We are live from the Atlanta Soda Zen Center in Atlanta, Georgia. We have two guests tonight. One who's been here before, Apriel, who you may remember, Jessup-Searcy, last name, and Nakeem Purkiss. Nakeem and Apriel are friends, and so we thought we'd do something a little different tonight, which is to interview more than one person. So far, we've just been focusing in on an individual's practice path, how they got into meditation, what was going on in their life at that time, and so forth, and what they do for a living, that kind of thing. People are interested. People want to know. So the thrust of the program, or what we think is important about it, is that Zen, meditation of all kinds, and Zen as well, are becoming mainstream. And for the vast majority of people in America, I think it's still kind of weird. So they wonder, why would anybody do that? Why would you sit for long periods of time and occasionally have somebody hit you with a stick, which we do in Zen. So you have to ask for it, though. Highly controlled.
Thought you were going to get the stick tonight.
There will be no violence.
I've heard stories about the stick.
So with that, since Apriel has been through this a little bit, I want to start with her and just ask you a little bit about how you met Nakeem, how it came about, and little prologue. Friendship in Zen or Buddhism is kind of like community or sangha. We belong to many communities, at work, at home, and socially, and so forth. And we have lots of different kinds of friends. But the meaning of community in Zen is special in that it means harmonious community. So many times the communities we belong to at work and at home are not so harmonious. So they don't qualify as a sangha. And sangha, of course, is a Sanskrit word for community. Similarly, friendship in Sanskrit is kalyana mitra. In Japanese, it's chishiki. And it means good friend. So it's not just friend in the ordinary sense. Just a sangha is not a community in the ordinary sense, right? Of just any group of people. So good friend means you like the person, of course, and you have other qualities of the relationship that bring you together and make you friends. But one overriding interest is, like sangha, is to be harmonious in the practice and pursuit of Zen meditation, the Buddha Dharma, and so forth. In a good friend in the sangha, in the community, is somebody who's interested in your being successful in your practice. And so they try to do everything they can to encourage you. They try not to discourage you. They try not to mislead you or get in the way, that kind of thing. So if you put those two together, Kalyana Mitra is a member of the Sangha. It's a good friend within the Sangha, right?
Mhm.
And so I don't know anything about your relationship,
Mhm.
but I wanted to put that out there and say, I don't know if your friendship conforms to that kind of model or not. But that's the beginning point. So with that, Apriel, if you would introduce us to your friend, tell us about how you met, that kind of thing to start with.
Well, glad to be back here, Sensei, and
Glad to have you back.
Community. This is Nakeem Purkiss. We were fellow Sangha members at Shambhala in Atlanta, and
Okay.
he had.
Is that where you met?
Yeah, that's where we
Yes.
met.
Okay.
And
I think it was a leadership program that we met at.
right, I think so
Yeah.
too. Yeah, so we were
Not a bad place to meet somebody. We have
Right.
people coming here looking for mates, right?
right.
Better than a bar.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Less risky.
That's right. And I always had, really an affinity to when I saw younger people coming in the Sangha, specifically young people of color, I would make sure that that they were welcomed.
Is Nakeem young?
Oh yeah, he's like compared to me, he's young. He's like my kid's age.
I'm 29.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So for me, it was always important in that Sangha to be very welcoming, because sometimes I felt that, the newcomers that came didn't get that. And just to make connection with people, I thought it was very important, and just to really provide a ground for them to be able to have a resource to ask any questions to.
That's one thing about the Sangha, or we call it collaborative community here for different reasons. But part of it is we expect our initiates, our residents, and so on to meet and greet newcomers and to make people feel welcome. So that's definitely part of the community.
Yeah, and I was really taken aback by Akeem's, in a positive way, by the way that he would, when something didn't really make sense, or when it really wasn't the flow, he'd ask the question that I feel like a lot of people wanted to ask but wouldn't ask. So that was one of the things that we really became to respect and love about Nakeem, is his openness and willing to ask the questions and to
stick your neck out.
Yeah, and because that enabled other people to feel comfortable enough to be like, you would have said that, and really, encourage that. Because for me, along the path, along your journey, it's important to ask questions. And, we have like senior practitioners that are around us that, can help us on the way. So for me, that was important, so I thought, that's something very special about Nakeem, is his willingness to engross himself in the question and try to figure out, with conversation, through conversation and interaction, to figure out how to move forward.
So Nakeem, can you think back to when you first met Apriel and relate first impressions as she has just done, that kind of thing?
I like how bold you were.
Bold?
Yeah. I remember, I think there was like a sharing period at a program that we met at where I kind of stood up and said something that was kind of against the flow of where things were going. There was like this exercise that we did where we got in groups of 4, and then one person stood up and gave a summary of what the group came up with for the prompts. And
breakout groups.
Yeah, breakout groups. And I think I was one of the first people that stood up and said something that was kind of contrary to what everyone else was saying.
Was it part of what your group had discussed, though?
It was part of it. I was kind of an outsider. I was an outsider. I reported what the group came up with, and I reported how I felt differently. And I remember Apriel got back up after reporting the first time and gave her actual opinion. That was what I remember from you the first time. Yeah. So I like that. Yeah.
So in the last interview with Apriel, she told us about her first coming to meditative practice and why, how it came about, what was going on in her life. So take us back to that time in your life. It was Shambhala your first experience with meditation in group format, or Had you done something before that?
It was my first experience in group format. Yes.
Okay. So what was that like for you? Again, what were your initial impressions? And the detail of what you had conflict about is interesting, but not necessary that you share that with us, unless you want to. But what? Try to recount your first sort of reaction to coming into contact with meditation and a group of people. What was going on in your life, and what brought you there?
So I felt very stuck in my life around the period where I started to pick up meditation. Stuck. A general unsatisfactory feeling about the way my life was going.
Interesting you use that term, dukkha. You heard dukkha, suffering?
Yeah.
A better term for it is probably unsatisfactoriness. It's like, it's not exactly suffering in the sense of anguish and pain and so forth, but it's just things ain't right.
Yeah, there was it was kind of like an undertone that I couldn't identify what was wrong. I just knew that something was not quite right. And I wasn't specifically looking to meditation as an answer to that. I approached it more as like a stress reduction tool when I first read about it. I think the first book I ever read about meditation was Full Catastrophe Living.
Say it again?
Full Catastrophe Living, I think is the name of the book.
Full Catastrophe Living? Oh, Full Catastrophe Living. That's good. That's a good one.
But it's about a mindfulness-based stress reduction program and the benefits of the program over 8 weeks. And I didn't really know anything about meditation before I read that book.
So you had prepped a little bit before you
first a little bit, yeah. And I, through my preparation, read that it's good to get meditation instruction in person from someone who's experienced. So Shambhala was where I went to.
So then tell us, think back to the first time you went and sat in meditation with him. What was that experience like for you, the actual meditation part?
I was surprised at how open it felt. Being
open.
It was. I went to a 3-hour Learn to Meditate program, and it's hard to really state just how much of an impact that had on me, but it had a very strong impact.
Tell us more about the openness, the open feeling, compared maybe to before you came.
Before I came,
the opposite of open is closed.
It is.
I mean, that's one word you could choose. So was it like that?
I think I had a very specific idea or preconceived notion of what meditation was, and I felt like that was cracked open
from
just
reading.
A little bit from reading.
Yes.
Of what I was supposed to do when I sat down to meditate.
Yes.
I have a tendency to be very hard on myself. And that space was very gracious and gentle, and it was all the things that I was not to myself, and it felt open in that regard.
We're our own worst critics. The way I think about it, flowers are often used as examples of this in Buddhism, that the flower blossoms unaware of its own beauty. And so we're not only blindest to our own weaknesses, we're also blindest to our own strengths. And I think that's one of the things that can happen in meditation. It starts leveling out. You can still be critical of yourself. And it's better than being critical of others, but give yourself a break too. So what do you do for a living, if you don't mind talking a little bit about that, where you're coming from on a social or cultural level, you might say?
Sure. I work in IT. I'm a DevOps engineer. I've been working in IT for about 8 or 9 years now. Went to school for computer science. I've always kind of had an interest in computers. So yeah.
So what's that like? I don't, it's a mystery to me. For many people, Zen is a big mystery, and still is for me too, even though I've been doing it for 50 years or so. But what's it like doing IT programming? Is that what you do? And
I do a lot of development work.
What kind of, is that like I come from design background. training and design is like an immersion process, kind of like meditation,
Mhm.
where you learn how you work with materials just to learn how they behave, and you can
Right.
design something to be built of a given material.
Yeah.
But when it comes to computers, it seems like you're right into the microcosmos where, you know, it's all quantum or something. It's not, I can't find anything tangible to wrap my head around. How is that? What's that like?
Um, it was one of those things where whenever I would try to pick it up on my own, I had a lot of difficulty understanding how it worked.
Mhm.
And then I almost didn't even go for a computer science degree at all. I just decided to take a chance on it and take an intro class in college.
So you've done a little bit on your own, or
I
research?
yeah, I definitely spent a lot of time on computers trying to teach myself whatever I could.
Yeah.
But there was a limit to what I could do on my own, and I took that first class and it just clicked, and I've just gone through with it ever since.
Yeah, there's so many of our members are young guys who are in IT,
Mhm.
and that sort of passed me by. I was in design, and we were doing, you know, drawing board type design when CAD came on, computer assisted design, and we all made the transition, but it was wrenching. It was wrenching.
Yeah.
You know, nobody ever imagined or told us that we'd all be glued to keyboards for the rest of our life, and mice and so forth. So Apriel, you've heard a little bit now. Did you know this about you?
Yeah, we actually had talked about it because he had mentioned something about his job and transitioning, and I work with a bunch of IT folks all day long, all over the world. So you know, it was interesting. We had that commonality in language, and
Well, remind us again what you do professionally.
Sure. Yeah, I am a what they call a nursing informatics person. I actually got my master's in informatics, and it's kind of like a medical. I manage and create medical programs with IT for insurance, and so the nurses that they work on these applications. So we're building systems, building programs, integrating with different products and programs.
So you're kind of in the IT end of healthcare.
That's right.
So there's a nice overlap there.
Yeah.
So what would you say to people in the audience about your experience in meditation? People who are maybe thinking about it, maybe haven't gotten into it yet, on the fence. If anything, maybe say.
What would I say?
Imagine somebody whose life was like yours before you started practicing. You know, how could you empathize with their situation? How could you perhaps not quite explain, but illustrate how meditation might fit into their picture?
So,
as it did yours.
I remember the first time I ever tried to meditate.
On your own?
On my own, yeah.
Whatever.
Without any instruction. I just read some instructions in a book and I just tried it. And I think I set a timer for 15 minutes and I didn't make it to the end of the timer. And I thought to myself, why is it so hard to just be with myself for a couple of minutes?
What happened in that 15 minutes? Or less than 15 minutes? How did it progress and come to an end?
I think it just felt intolerable to me. I just couldn't take it.
Intolerable?
Yeah. It felt intolerable to me. So I stopped.
What about it felt that way? What made you feel that way?
Man, I haven't thought about this in a while.
It's been a while, right?
It's been a while. I think the thing that felt intolerable was that I couldn't do what I set out to do. When I tried.
Oh, you set yourself up for failure.
Yeah. I felt like I was so terrible at meditating.
Yeah, we caution against that. I think there are averages, you know, that people can come to. Like if I can sit a half an hour, great. But my teacher used to say, sit 5 minutes, Buddha. You know, sit a half hour, Buddha for a half hour. And wouldn't you rather be Buddha all day, kind of thing. But especially in the West, I think, and we understand Japan may be even worse in this manner. we set ourselves up for failure. We say, I must do this, and I must do it for half an hour, and I must, right, 15 minutes or whatever it happens to be. And then, of course, we've set an expectation. And if we don't meet the expectation, we're disappointed, turns back on yourself, right? So we suggest that people just sit when they can. You don't have to, you get to. You get to do meditation when you get to do it, right? Like when you were a kid, mom, you want to go in the car with mom. And mom says, okay, you can go, you were happy, right? You got to go. Mom said, no, you have to stay, then you were unhappy because you didn't get to go. So if you could recover that childlike or joy, around meditation, look, I get to do this. I think that's where it needs to be. But that, I think, is a wonderful illustration that you just drew for us of cultural conditioning. It's not just you, it's everybody. Anything to say on that, Apriel?
No, I mean, I agree with that. And it's like, for me, when you ask us about friendship, I feel like friendship in the Sangha, friendship amongst individuals, that helps support the practice, like you just said. Because when you see people, that you're sitting by, and that encourages you to continue to be there for however long you can be there. And I think that's important, what you said. It's important for however long you can be there, and to have other people with you to support you in that process.
And you, at the center you were practicing, they had sharing sessions where you had the opportunity to talk and get to know each other a little better.
Yeah.
But one thing that we remark upon is that when you sit together silently, you're not building a relationship. You're not, right, developing a friendship. You're just sitting there side by side. But some kind of bond forms. Something happens that's like my teachers say, you and me communication, kind of a vibe, I guess, it sets in. So let's see. Where do we want to go with this? I'd like to ask you to compare. How long have you been sitting now, would you say? It was in a formal setting.
In a formal setting, I think I started around like January 2017 formally.
Okay, so it's a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple
So
informal before that.
informal on your own.
Yeah.
So you gave us a good description of what it was like when you first tried. Did you try again after that on your own?
Yes.
Repeatedly?
So,
and where did it get to?
So my big takeaway from the first time I ever tried it was that it felt impossible, but I also felt very adamant that it shouldn't be.
Why is it so hard?
Yeah. And I would say that's the reason why I kept trying, why I kept looking more. And I did eventually start to feel some of the effects of practice, particularly during stressful periods of my work. There was one point where I was on call 24/7.
Wow.
The stress was really getting to me.
Yeah.
It
So
definitely helped during that period.
So you could say then that your exploration of meditation on your own began to pay off.
It did begin to help, but I also recognized that there was some benefit to seeking actual instruction,
Sure,
too,
of course.
which is why I started to do that.
What kind of time frame was that? Did you stick with it for a year or so before it started working for you, would you say? Or was it 6 months? Or
I think I started experimenting with it for about 6 months before I could really say for sure that it was doing something. That's very on and off, 6 months.
No, that may be kind of, I tell people I'm a shameless promoter. And I say, if you do this for 6 months, you're going to notice a big difference.
Yeah.
So then give us a description. You gave us a description of what it was like in the beginning. Try to profile for the audience how it feels now. You said that it was, you were emphasizing the feeling, and obviously you're feeling a lot of resistance, right? You were feeling this is impossible, and then getting down on yourself because of it. How does it feel now when you meditate a couple of years later?
Nothing like that first time.
It's often easier to say what it is now
Yeah.
than what it is.
Yeah, I can't really identify where the shift was specifically with how I related to meditation practice, but it no longer bothers me that I have thoughts. And it used to really bother me when in meditation practice when I would have all these thoughts.
This is one of the main misconceptions. I think people will say, "What am I supposed to do? I'm not supposed to think, right?" And good luck with that. We call it monkey mind, and Zen is called monkey mind, like a monkey jumping from limb to limb of a tree, chattering. But if you try to fight it, it turns into a 600-pound gorilla, and you'll lose that battle. So we recommend that you just let it go, like you're getting our puppy dog that'll run its tether out, lie down and take a nap after a while. So the monkey mind is our friend. It's designed for survival. It has to keep everything on an even keel, so we know if something's attacking us or running away from us and so forth. So nonetheless, sitting facing a blank wall is not much use. And it tends to go berserk, especially in the beginning. But most people have trouble waiting that out, outlasting it. Yeah. So Apriel, how is it for you? I don't think we talked about these same points. What did it feel like when you first started sitting? And I can't remember now how long ago you said that started on your own. And then can you make that comparison? What's it like for you now?
I feel like initially it was just similar to what Nakeem said. It was just, oh my God, I cannot believe sitting here is like, it was so intense. I didn't know all of my thoughts were going to be that intense, just sitting there and just watching stuff. So it was just, and I didn't know, like you said initially, it was just like I thought I wasn't supposed to have thoughts during meditation. So it was very challenging initially. And then over time,
just because of
it was like I didn't know.
Mind dump,
overthinking. It was exactly like I think Tom you had talked about how it's amazing how much stuff just comes up when you're sitting there. It's just like a download. You're like, oh my God, it's like seriously, So, but now it's like it come, the thoughts come. I don't really try to control them. I just like, oh, there you are, okay, and then just let them go. And it's so much more, it's a different relationship with the mind now because you understand how the mind works and what it's trying to do. And so it's a recognition of that and then knowing how to put some understanding around that. And it makes it's not even a tolerable thing. It's more like, oh, this is like a relief.
This point of control that you bring up is a very important one culturally too. It's we think we are in control. We need to be in control. We should be in control. So we speak of controlling our breath and controlling our thoughts and so forth. But in Zen, we recognize that we're not really in control. Your body is controlling the breath. Body and mind are working together. But if you can relinquish the idea of control and open yourself to see what happens when you let go, then we see that you can trust it. It's in control of itself. May go over the cliff a few times. But.
Yeah, that for me, that one fact of realizing that I'm not in control was such a relief. Because I was just like exhausted trying to control every single aspect of everything, every day, every moment.
It wasn't a relief for me.
Right? Was it a fear, scare?
It turned into an existential crisis for me.
That's good. Better on the cushion than on the expressway.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Safer.
Right.
So where would you go from here? Where do you see your practice going in the future? And one of the interesting things, work always comes up in what we call dokusan. It's an interview, a one-on-one interview that we do, where people can bring up whatever's going on in their practice. And often their dilemma, issues, problems tend to be around work practice. And is it right livelihood? Am I doing do I have the right career?
Yeah.
And so forth. It sounds like you have settled into what you're doing. You're pretty happy with it. But one of the interesting things, I think, especially in an area like IT, which to my way of thinking is so much like meditation, it's maybe really up in the head. And in our meditation, at least in Zen, we think it's a gut level, visceral kind of process, which a guy like Einstein described his thought experiments like that. He said they're visceral. They're not exactly thinking, conceptually thinking, but more imagining. So can you draw any parallels between your meditation and your work in that way? Where have you seen, maybe it's the best place to start, that your meditation has had some effect on your work? And do you see it, do they go back and forth that way, complementary to each other or something? I don't know.
I would say that it has had an effect on my work, but not with the actual logistics of what I do once I sit down in front of a computer. It's more about the interactions that I have with people that have changed substantially, I would say.
So the interpersonal.
Yeah, and it's more of an interpersonal benefit, and this has been of great benefit to me.
And what can you give us, not necessarily the gory details, but an instance of that where something surprised you at work around that? We had one guy who came in and he'd been promoted. And he said one of the reasons they promoted him, he's since been recruited by Apple, so he's out on the West Coast now. He was with the weather station here. And so he said one of the reasons they gave me a promotion is because I get everybody to work so well together. And he said, and that's not me, I'm the troublemaker.
Yeah.
So sometimes people at work may notice that something different about you. You're not going crazy like everybody else. But so how did this come about? If you can give us a little more detail on that. Can you remember? For you, it's subtle. It's like the flower not seeing itself.
Yeah. I remember that I used to be very closed off into myself at work. And I'd say it took about a year process from when I really started taking meditation seriously to when I really started to have any effect of it showing up at work.
Right.
And it was very gradual, but I started actually making work friends. I had never
Which can be dangerous.
Yeah, I know. I didn't really have work friends before I really. Yeah. And I pretty much grew up as a very shy child. This kind of thing is not something this interview process is
not something you're used to.
Not something I would have been into maybe 5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, unprepared. Hey, do you want to be interviewed in front of the camera?
One of our members came to a week-long retreat. And he came back into Dokusan later. He said, after the retreat, I went back to work. And he said, this guy always comes in and pushes my buttons. And we just get into it, And he said, this time the buttons were gone. So he became best friends with this guy. And so there was something in his reaction, you know what I mean, back and forth, that was creating this conflict between them. And he saw the other guys pushing his buttons, and maybe that's true. But you have to react to those buttons as well. I think this is an important message for people working under stressful. We're all under a lot of stress today, I think. Very important message for how it can affect you there. So before we turn to some questions from the audience, is there anything you would like to say we haven't talked about? Any part of this that we haven't really talked about?
I'd say that one other big area of my life that meditation has impacted is my relationship with alcohol. I decided to become sober through meditation. I tried to meditate one morning after drinking quite a bit, and I thought, what am I doing to myself?
Drinking the night before?
Yeah, the night before. Yeah, the next morning I tried to sit and...
The hangover sit.
I decided to try not doing that to myself. It's been a lot better for me. So,
wonderful.
Yeah.
My teacher used to say, if you drink and don't get drunk, there's a problem.
Yeah.
The alcohol itself, the substance, cannot really be the problem, right?
Yeah.
But if you and we've had some people, a lot of people have addiction and alcohol problems. One guy in particular was always talking about in Dokusan, worried he's falling off the wagon or going to. And so I just encouraged him. I said, well, next time you do, go sit. Next time you do, go meditate with it and just dive into it and see what it is, right? But that was while you're drunk, not the next morning. Maybe try it during the hangover too. Good idea.
Yeah.
So let's turn to the audience, and Apriel, let's start with you. Do you have any questions you would like to ask?
I'm gonna pass for right now. I'm gonna let
Okay, we'll come back to you
come
then.
back to me. Yeah.
I think
Apriel, tell me about bringing him over here.
Okay, so it's probably public knowledge that we've come from a sangha that has had some challenges. And Nakeem and I were actually we were really involved in the process to really address things with the sangha to try to hold the sangha together. Different committees, whatever workshop, work group,
Working
just try
groups.
to get people to kind of hear the sangha, because we felt the sangha as a third jewel was really a strong part of where you revert to in trauma. You go back to what you know, the Dharma and the Sangha, when one of the jewels is it kind of helps. So for me,
it's like a Dharma family.
Yeah.
And just as with your family, the problems are in the family, but that's how you have to deal with the
you
family.
have to come together to, work through that. So I think I told you when I was making my transition out. Yeah, because it was important to me, because these are my family. So to let them know, hey, this is not working. I have to figure out what I need to do for my path. I'm going to stay in touch with you and let you know what's up. So you do the same to me as continued support. So when I found the Subtle Zen Center, and I started coming, and I checked Sensei out and the Sangha, and I'm like, oh, these people, okay, I could do this. Yeah. So I reached out to some of my people that I knew that needed, would like a place to where they could feel supported and a place to sit. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I said, hey, Nakeem, whenever, I think it was like maybe a month ago.
Yeah.
I said, I dropped you an email, like, when you get ready, or if you want to come hang out, this is a cool place. Check it out.
So Nakeem, maybe tell us a little bit about that when you first came here. Any way you want to approach it, differences, sameness, so on.
The first time I came here was about a year ago. I came for a Wednesday workshop, and
this was long before.
It was around the time where things were starting to happen.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know it was
As far
long
as
before.
it's been about 9 months since a lot of allegations came out.
Having a baby. 9 months.
Yeah. And I just wanted to start looking around a little bit just to get a feel for what else was out there in Atlanta, because I'd never really felt the need to before. Yeah, so that was the first time I checked out the Soto Zen Center.
What was that like? Can you think back to that first impression, first experience?
It was a dark evening, so I was surprised at how dark it was in here. It was raining outside, and I thought it was very weird that we faced the wall. And I remember thinking that I liked not facing the wall a lot better at the time.
You have to trust the people who are attending on you.
Yeah, it doesn't. The second time I tried it last week, it didn't bother me nearly as much. So I think I already had the right expectation going into it of what I would be doing, so it's a lot easier the second time.
So any further questions for Nakeem?
I was just wondering, anger is a big issue for a lot of people trying to sit, or it's a big issue in our lives anyway. Did you have any issues with that prior? And if so, or if not, has meditation helped you with anger?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I tend to be very out of touch with my anger. So it might be even the opposite for me, where it helps me get more in touch with that emotion. I don't really see it as a problem for me. Like, I don't see anger as a problem with how I work with it right now.
Well, let me ask, what makes you ask that question?
Oh, because I fly off the handle. And I can tell when I don't meditate regularly. I mean, it's a switch. Meditation helps you.
Yeah. I think the distinction for me is that I feel like it is okay to experience anger, but I feel like reacting with anger is a different thing.
Yeah, the precept as we express it is do not indulge anger. Indulging is different from feeling. Anger. And anger is not always ego, according to Zen. It's kids running the street, mom's angry, because she's trying to protect something important and something's threatened. So anger is a natural reaction. But there's an old Zen saying, watch the anger arise. If you see it arising, you're not yet enraged, so you can see where it's coming from.
A lot of the things that help is removing myself from situations where I feel like the interaction is not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
That's been a part of it too, I think, for me.
Yeah. Beating your head against a wall.
Yeah.
So, anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, meditation doesn't have to be intolerable.
Thank you. That's why you be here.
That's a t-shirt.
Apriel, a closing comment.
It's just that, I'm so glad to see Nakeem's smiling, brilliant face here, and I'm glad that you were open to the interview and sharing. So I learned so much more about you. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I think we spent more time in silence together than talking together.
Right.
So welcome, Nakeem.
Thank you.
I hope you find this your home, your meditation home. Treat this as your own Zendo or your second home. We invite everybody to tune in again next week. We'll have ZENtalk starts. Doesn't really matter the time, does it? Because they can look at it anytime they want on YouTube.
Yeah, it's available anytime on Facebook. They can also join us at 7:30 on Thursdays. And if you want to join us in the Zendo live audience.
Yes, we'd like you to be part of the studio audience, and we start sitting at 6:30. We sit until 7:15, so we have a meditation period, and then we break and set up and begin at 7:30. So you can join us live and send in questions. How do they send in a question?
Hang on, it keeps disconnecting. Let's hang on to that question for just a second.
I'm assuming that we can send a question in and get it
Ask
answered.
that question again.
Yeah, I was wondering, I know when we do Mixler, people can send the messages in through the internet, and then we can actually read the questions and get an answer.
Yeah, and they can post on Facebook Live as well.
And that'll show up for you.
Were there any questions
On the
online?
monitor.
No, just some thumbs up.
Oh, cool.
Be good. Next time.
Did I
Thank
get
you.
thumbs up?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thumbs up for Tom. Very good. Thank you.
Cool.
Was I here in your first beginning?
Yeah, I think you were. You and Brennan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How long have you been living here?
Since the first of the year.
Okay.
We've had some conflicts. We haven't had anything that you would call scandalous.